Congratulations on 2 talks. You must have a lot of wisdom and knowledge. We're going to get laptops switched out and get the new slides up here before I introduce our next speaker. Just a quick survey question of the room. Does anyone here work at or for a nonprofit? A few people. Does anyone volunteer for nonprofits? A few more people. Does anybody work in city government, state government? Those are nonprofits, right? You don't make any money. I mean, some agencies might, but. So this next speaker is going to be talking about the intersection of nonprofits and cybersecurity, which is a topic very near and dear to my heart. ChiliSec is kind of branching out and evolving into a nonprofit. We're going to set up something called CITRA, New Mexico CITRA. That stands for Cybersecurity Intelligence Threat Response Alliance. And you can think of it like an ISAL, but it's regional and very directed toward what we're doing here in New Mexico. So check out nmcitra.org on the web and stay tuned as to what's going to come there. All right, good deal. We got everything all hooked up. Okay, great. So like I mentioned, our speaker is going to talk about cybersecurity and nonprofits. We have Denise Zubizarreta. Oh gosh, I'm going to get it right. Denise Zubizarreta. Please welcome to the stage, Denise.
What is up, B-Sides? I know you guys are ready for lunch, but we could get a little bit more enthusiastic. What's up, B-Sides? There we go. You can tell I did stand-up for 10 years before I started speaking. My name is Denise Zubizarreta. I am a cultural operations strategist. Who knows what that is? Good, because I made it up. I speak to nonprofit organizations and arts organizations about a whole laundry list of different things because I'm also an artist, a journalist, and a research scholar because I don't have enough things to do in a day. And part of what ended up happening is through my wonderful relationship with a partner who is in cybersecurity that has far too many acronyms after their name for me to list, this ended up becoming a passion. And I'm going to explain to you why. Who remembers this? Show of hands. I figured, right? If you're not in the arts community, you probably didn't care that this happened. So when gallery systems, did I shut? No, I. That's right, if you got this information, you knew where the Mona Lisa was taking a nap and where works that are worth billions of dollars to the art market were sitting all over the world. And the problem with Gallery Systems' breach wasn't just that it was breached, it was that Gallery Systems is the only gallery system that I break everything. It's just my presence. Gallery Systems is the only system within the United States that does this. They're the only one also to be more in depth into what they need to secure themselves in the current market. And this is part of that culture shift. But if these organizations don't have that awareness, and you don't have the awareness that we need your help, there's really nothing that we can do. We are moving right along. Congratulate yourself. You've sat through this, it's so exciting. So, oh, that's so messed up. That beautiful
Yeah, sorry. So I was asking just if there's any sort of method or current organization that brings together different nonprofits who all have this same desire to improve their cybersecurity posture, and maybe they can all pool their money together or grant money funding, just to try and do some sort of economy of scale to make it more affordable for all of them.
The answer is no. Okay, I'm gonna explain, hold on. The answer is no, and then what ends up happening, to be fair, you have me. This is it, okay? So teach me what you can. And then I end up going to conferences and speaking at multiple conferences for different kinds of nonprofits and different kinds of arts organizations, because of course, they still silo themselves within these spaces, right? And then I have this talk over and over and over and over again ad nauseum, which I'm sure y'all are also used to having to say this over and over and over again to people, right? So right now, there is nothing that exists. I wish something did exist. I wish there was a larger organization, especially in cybersecurity, who was like, hey, we want to do this and have these conversations with you that could kind of take that on. But right now, you have me. I'm a product though. That's fine. Hold on. Let me get to the person in the back. Yes.
More of a comment. Are you aware of TechSoup?
Yes.
Okay. Because they do have, not the training aspect of that, but at least the reduced price for nonprofits and for anybody who's a nonprofit in the room of getting IT services and stuff at a cheaper price just for nonprofits, I believe. in the
Correct.
US.
And still some of those prices are too high for certain
Correct.
nonprofits in the sector. And that's why I think the training is more beneficial. I can convince a nonprofit to spend some money on training, and then everybody is aware and we can all work together and maybe have somebody come in every once in a while to just check up and take a peek, right? It's harder to convince especially the smaller nonprofits to bring on something like that and just kind of push that money into that space when they already barely have funding, and now right now their funding is getting cut from the government as well. So all that federal funding is gone, and now they've gone into individual donor. So it becomes even more tedious and difficult. So I think a training aspect is probably going to be the most optimal solution. I will come back to you. Yes.
What is the digital defense fund, in your opinion, if not exactly what they just described? Mostly because they spawn techies for RJ and then add all the other organizations that do group purchases for siloed nonprofit.
Yes. And I'm going to tell you right now, most of them don't even know that it exists, which is unfortunate. Most of them have no clue that it's there. They don't know how to utilize it. They're afraid they can't afford it. They don't understand why it's even beneficial. So they kind of get stuck in that loop. The few who do know what it is are usually larger organizations that are already looking, right? So the smaller ones get left by the wayside and then they get trampled over. Yes.
Yeah, somebody asked earlier if nonprofits get together. I used to work for a nonprofit. It was a healthcare nonprofit. And one of the biggest issues for nonprofits is Congress. I don't think they've passed a budget in the last decade. They've been a bunch of continuing resolutions, so it makes it very difficult to get into contracts and
Yeah.
just to plan funding out greater than 2 to 3 years. I used to work for the NMPCA, and you had a bunch of these rural healthcare organizations. They would pull their money together. We ran a community cloud so that they could bring records from the barn, right, into a digital format so people could go to press or whatever and
Right.
have continuity of care. And so it's literally a multitude of things working against a nonprofit. First, like I said, Congress hasn't passed a budget. They keep passing these CRs, so they can't plan for long term. And then the second thing is technology moves so quickly. By the time it gets on TechSoup, it's already
It's too late.
it's already obsolete. So it is a difficult space to be in for sure. And so a lot of nonprofits do rely on donors. They are frequently up at the Roundhouse here in New Mexico. If like for example, we had PCA Day, Primary Care Health Day. The clinics would show up, but it was more impactful when the constituents of those communities also showed up at the Roundhouse and spoke to the legislators. So it's really about finding out when those events happen and showing up and advocating for those organizations.